Okay, good morning and welcome to the June 20th, 2022 meeting of the Transit Commission. We've received regrets from Commissioner Williams, and I'll now ask the Commission Coordinator to please proceed with the roll call.
Commissioner Brockington.
Here.
Commissioner Carricato. Commissioner Gower.
Here.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Here.
Commissioner McKenney.
Present.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Curry.
Here.
Commissioner Tierney. Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Wright Gilbert.
Good morning.
Vice Chair Cloutier.
Yeah.
Chair Hubley.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there any declarations of interest? Okay, seeing none, can we please confirm the minutes of the Transit Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 18th? Are they confirmed?
Confirmed.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go through the consent agenda. Item number 1 is the Confederation line and bus service update, so we'll hold that. Item 2 is the Paratranspose service updates. We're going to hold that. The sorry here. I should before I move on, number 3, I should advise members. I've got a tail end of a cold here that affects my throat, and so if I get into a coughing fit, I'm going to ask Councillor Cloutier to take over for me, please. Okay, item number 3 is delegation of authority for contracts awarded from the period of January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021 for the Transit Commission. There's no presentation, there's no delegations. Does anybody want to hold that, or will we just receive it?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if we could hold that, please. I have a couple of questions.
Hold, okay.
Yes, please.
And item number 4 is the capital adjustments and closing of projects for the Transit Commission. Again, no presentation, no delegations. Does anybody want to hold that, or is it received?
Received.
Received.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and then and that's it for the agenda. So we'll go back to item number 1, which is the update, Confederation line and bus service update. And Renee, when you're ready, I believe there's a presentation that you also want to give on the zero emission bus program at the same time. So if staff could proceed with the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. As always, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. A lot has happened over the last month, so we will update you on some important files and also run through our key performance indicators. You can put to the first slide, please. We also have some guests who will provide updates on some OC Transpo projects. I'm pleased to welcome Remo Bucci from Lrv, who will present a financial update on the zero emission bus program. Dan Ober from TRA is here to provide an update on Lrt safety oversight work. Troy Charter from my team will also provide you an overview of the month's key performance indicators. Pat Scrimger will then present the Paratranspose key performance indicators in a separate presentation. Next slide, please. Like last month, I will start today by providing a few key updates since our last meeting. As many of you know, June is Employee Recognition Month at the City of Ottawa. I want to publicly thank all our transport staff members for the incredible work they do every day. They keep our city moving and they are always there for our community. As you know, we have faced some challenges this year, but our staff has risen to the occasion to ensure our customers get where they need to go safely and efficiently. Our team also has a lot to celebrate. We added an online booking tool for Paratranspose customers, and we are piloting our zero-emission buses. We are midstream in our bus operator recruitment campaign to grow our team and increase bus service delivery. The past number of months has shown consistent high reliability of our train line 1, with over 99% delivery for the past 3 months. An incredible progress is happening on stage 2 LRT construction. This is just some of the exceptional work our team has accomplished. A big heartfelt thank you goes out to all our dedicated staff. As you know, the May 21st storm that had a major impact on our community. As with all significant weather events, our OC Transport team adjusted quickly to ensure we continued providing safe and efficient service to our customers. Despite the challenges, Ocean Line 1, conventional bus and paratransport service continued running well shortly after the storm ended. The Transit Operations Control Center activated our severe weather plan. Our operations staff quickly implemented detours on dozens of bus routes to avoid hazards and debris. We set up 2 community shuttles to bring residents to emergency reception centers. Our staff did an incredible job and we are thankful for their work. As we said in the June 1st memo, RTG has postponed some planned maintenance work between Herdman and Blair stations due to a delay in material delivery. RTG continues with planned seasonal maintenance that can be done during normal overnight maintenance hours, including general cleaning and vegetation control. Once the rail delivery details are confirmed, we will work with RTG to find new dates to complete the rail work that minimize impacts to customers. We will update you when new dates are confirmed. For the last several months, I have been providing regular ridership data at Transit Commission meetings. It takes time to collect information and for our staff to crunch this data. Typically, conventional ridership calculations are completed about 3 weeks into the following month. This is standard for most transit authorities. We will only be able to share May's ridership numbers next week. I will send you the details in a memo once the information is available. At a recent meeting, we had committed to provide data about customers and their current transit travel habits. We are still analyzing the data and will provide an update via memo once the analysis is complete. We are able to provide Paratranspose ridership data for May and will show that to you during our Paratranspose update later this morning. As mentioned at the previous meeting, as we continue to see increased ridership on Paratranspose, we will need to return to the pre-COVID practice of shared rides at busy times to accommodate all customers. Shared rides will only be scheduled on as needed basis at this point. Earlier, I mentioned that you will be getting an update from TRA on their safety oversight work on the LRT. As part of this enhanced oversight, RTG is obligated to provide a final root cause report into the August 2021 derailment. RTG informs that they have engaged their subcontractors as well as third-party external support and will provide us with a consolidated set of recommendations and action plan. This work is still underway, and we will share RTG's final report publicly when we receive it. As you will hear from TRA today, there are many additional safety oversight measures in place for our LRT system. and O-Train Line 1 service delivery has been consistently high at over 99% for the past 3 months. This is great news. Next slide, please. As I said in the memo last week, wearing a mask on transit is no longer required by law. Paratranspose continues to follow Ottawa Public Health advice and strongly encourages people to wear masks on buses and trains, Paratranspose minibuses and taxi, and in stations and shelters. High cleaning practices remain a priority. We will continue to undertake enhanced daily cleaning of our buses and trains. Plexiglass barriers will remain in place on all buses, and hand sanitizer will be available for customers at all transit stations. Our staff continue to remove posters and signage throughout the system. For customers who connect to STO service, masks are required until this Saturday, June 18. Next slide, please. We will implement our summer service changes on June 26th, and the details were shared with you in a memo sent last month. Our special school services will end until schools resume in August and September. Weekend service to summer destinations will begin to destinations like Patriot Island, the Canada Aviation and Space Museum, and the Canada Agriculture Museum. In July and August, Paratranspose has a family pass where the whole family can ride all day on a single day pass, which only costs $11.25. A family pass is also always available on Saturdays and Sundays and on statutory holidays. There are also 2 permanent transitway closures taking place to allow for stage 2 construction. This is another big milestone for this project. Customers can find full details on these changes on octranspose.com. Next slide, please. As you know, downtown Canada celebrations are moving from Parliament Hill to Le Breton Flats. And as in years past, transit will be no charge on Canada Day. This year's event will be one with many firsts. It is the first large in-person celebration in 2 years, the first at a new location, and the first with our O-Train line service. We are working closely with Kim Ayotte and his team. We have a solid plan, and we are ready to serve our customers on Canada Day. We will be running a 15-train service on O-Train Line 1 during busy times, and we will have many additional buses to increase capacity and later evening service on many routes. We have been running 15-train service at various peak periods for the past number of weeks to test the system. These trials are going very well. Our team has conducted a thorough risk assessment. We also consulted other rail systems and got advice from Dr. Kate Steele, a worldwide expert in crowd control. The main pressure point of the daily will be service at Le Breton Flats after the fireworks end. Our plan to support customers is as follows. Customers will be directed from the side south on Booth Street to Pimisi Station. Customers who are traveling east will be directed to the O-Train platform to ride eastbound trains. We will have extra buses ready to carry customers home as they transfer from their trains at Herdman, Saint Laurent, and Blair stations. Customers who are traveling west will be directed to bus stops on Albert Street, where buses will take them directly home to Ottawa West, Nepean, Barrhaven, Canada, and Stouffville. This will make homebound trips easier for customers heading west, as a bus will be waiting on site to take them to their final destination. We will have many staff on site to guide customers along the way to be sure they get home easily and safely. We will also broadly share information in advance in real time and on site. We want everyone to enjoy the day, but we also want to ensure our customers and employees are safe. Behind the scenes, we are also running tabletop exercises so that staff know how to support customers on Canada Day. All details will be available on our website. Next slide, please. We will soon be offering customers more ways to pay their fares. We are beginning the life cycle replacement of our green fare readers with new red smart cards readers, which you can see on this slide. Some of the fare gates at all O-Train Line 1 stations already have upgraded readers. The new and improved red readers are equipped with the latest technology that will give customers more options, including the ability to tap a credit card or mobile wallet or scan the barcode on their transfer or special event ticket. By the end of the year, all the readers on our buses and inside O-Train stations will be switched to the new red readers. Expanded payment options will be available once the replacements are complete. We will keep you updated on this work. Next slide, please. As you have seen and heard, we have had another busy month. I would now like to pass the floor to Raymond Bucci from Deloitte, who will present a financial update and Lrv Transpose Zero Emission Bus Program. Following his presentation, Dan Auber from Transportation Resource Associates Incorporated, TRA, will provide an update on the project work. We will then pass the floor to Troy Charter, who will provide an overview of our monthly key performance indicators. We will pause for Q&A. Patch Kimger will then walk you through the Paratranspose presentation. Thank you very much. Next slide, please.
Good morning. Just quick voice check. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Thank you. So pleasure to be here with you this morning. So Raymond Bucci from Deloitte. If you recall last year, I think right around a year ago, we had come in front of you or in front of council to talk about the memorandum of understanding or to get approval to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Canadian Infrastructure Bank. Today, we're going to talk about the progress of that. It's got to the point now where the loan facility, the size of the loan has been confirmed. And then we'll give a quick update on the other two key components, which is the Infrastructure Canada grant funding and the work that's being done with Hydro Ottawa and Lrv to deal with the charging infrastructure. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview, the actual structure of the loan, the loan hasn't changed. Just high level, the facility will be in place between 2023 and 2027. That'll give the city the ability to use the loan to buy up to 450 buses. The size has now been confirmed at $380 million, and I'll talk to how the city and the Canadian Infrastructure Bank got to that in a moment. Between 2023 to 2027, as you're borrowing from the facility, you'll be charged interest at 1%, starting in 2027 up to 2042, so 15 years, which is the assumed life cycle of the buses. The city will then be repaying that loan. You'll be making the principal and interest payment. So between 2023 to 2027, you will draw down for the facility, interest will be incurred, and then you repay the loan from 2027 to 2042. The loan is to be used to pay for the incremental cost of the buses, so the incremental cost between the diesel and the electric buses. And the city will then use the savings as a source of funding, if you will, to repay the loan. Effectively, what the Canadian Infrastructure Bank is doing is because they're paying that incremental cost of the buses, if those savings that were assumed in the baseline, I'll talk about that in a moment, are not achieved, then for that year, you wouldn't repay that difference. So that's the important feature of the facility. That's effectively the same mechanics we had talked about last year really what's happened is since the memorandum of understanding was entered into, the Canadian Infrastructure Bank brought on a technical advisor. That technical advisor reviewed the city's plans, did technical due diligence basically in the last calendar year up to December. Beginning this new year, once that technical assessment was done, Canadian Infrastructure Bank, the bank, I should call them just to shorten that, in the city got into more specific details on the financial model. The bank built their own financial model using the technical inputs from their technical advisor. The city had the model that was built last year with your technical inputs updated just from the additional work that was done. Comparisons were made, and now both parties gotten to the agreement of the savings baseline. So the savings that would be achieved from that conversion of buses, that's now confirmed the size at 380 million. And now the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, and I'll talk about a little bit on the next slide, but will be taking that facility to their board for approval in July. So you see the loan and the size. I think I covered that, the source of the payments. The Infrastructure Canada grant program will be running in parallel with the bank's facility, and I'll talk about that in a moment, the status of that. And again, ownership and procurement. This is a loan just like any other loan the city would be getting, and you're responsible for the procurement, and you'll be owning the vehicles. Any questions there, or should we move to the next slide and we'll take questions maybe after that? So in terms of Infrastructure Canada, I think when we spoke last year, the anticipation was the grant program was going to be launched in the summer. There was a pause because of the election. The program got restarted early this year. The city pre-qualified or qualified and are now into detailed discussions with Infrastructure Canada. The expectation is the details of that grant program or the city's grant from Infrastructure Canada will probably be made available early next year. The city is seeking the maximum amount that's available to any one party, so 350 million. In terms of Hydro Ottawa and Vari, there will be an agreement in place to design, to procure and install the charging infrastructure, so the improvements that are required at the substation to bring the power, the additional power that's needed to the maintenance facility, the service improvements in terms of the additional line capacity, then on the site itself, the charging infrastructure, the charging stations, and the standby power. That's when we say charging infrastructure, that's really what that is. And the expectation is that Hydro Ottawa and Vari will be on behalf of the city procuring those, installing them. The city will be paying for all of the components of it through the grant funding or the city's contribution. And I guess the other important point to note is the Infrastructure Canada grant program and the bank's program have been designed to work together. I think we also spoke about one of the details that just needs to be worked through in the grant program is to make sure that eligibility is clear, and no concerns there yet. It seems that all the assumptions that we've been making, collectively been making in the financial model in terms of eligibility seem to be heading in the right direction. That will be confirmed in the fall. And the next report back will be the details of that grant program and the agreement with Hydro Ottawa and Vari to design, procure, and install the charging infrastructure. So I think that's it. I think at this point, I think we're open for questions.
Okay, so first up, we have Commissioner Wright, Gilbert, please. Sorry, Commissioner, if I can hold you off for one moment. We do have one delegation. Let's let the delegation go first.
Absolutely.
Laura, are you with us? Okay. Eric, do you see her in the waiting room or anything?
Chair, the delegation has joined. However, I'm not sure if staff have completed their presentation yet. If you wanted them to complete the presentation before going to the
there.
delegation.
All right.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Laura. Thank you. Just a sec. We're just confirming here. I thought we had gone to questions, but Renee, you still have some presentation to do?
Correct, Chair. We have
Okay.
still, yeah, and we will
Okay.
be able to take the questions after Troy.
Okay, after Troy. Okay,
Yes.
Laura, we'll bring you back in after Troy, if that's okay. Okay, go ahead, Troy.
It's Daniel Ober first. Dan, you can go.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Pelot, if you don't mind, we can go to the next slide. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you again here today. As General Manager Amakar mentioned, we'll provide a brief update on TRA's work for the city regarding Line 1. We could go to the next slide, please. So by way of an update and a little bit of reminder, our work continues to focus on work both with the city and with its contractor team for Line 1, specifically focused on contractor return to service commitments as they relate to operations and maintenance, and also specifically to SMS, safety, maintenance planning, and overall contractor responsiveness. We're also focused on OC Transpo and the city's processes in the way that they support resilience and contractor oversight and monitoring with regard to Line 1. And finally, where applicable, we also focus on rail transit industry best practices applicable to Line 1 and to the light rail operation overall, and any implications and lessons learned that may be applicable to Stage 2 as well. Go to the next slide, please. Focusing specifically on the return to service and SMS commitments. The tracking process for the return to service commitments and the status of those, both the general commitments and the SMS commitments, is well managed by RTM and is verified independently on an ongoing basis by TRA. There is a monthly review with the city, with RTM, and with other stakeholders, including RTM and RTG subcontractors, regarding the status of those return to service and SMS commitments. TRA also conducts independent review of key mitigations, such as ongoing mitigations related to axle bearings. We also conduct ongoing and as needed review of key documents, plans, and procedures as they support the return to service and SMS commitments. With regard to the return to service commitments, the immediate mitigations regarding the axle bearing failure in particular and larger organizational and maintenance related mitigations remain in place and are continually verified by TRA in cooperation with the city, and they remain effective. Longer term mitigations such as organizational realignment, rail and track studies, contractor oversight, and other key mitigations are in place and are progressing at this time. With regard to SMS commitments and safety related commitments, the immediate commitments such as the updated SMS document itself have been completed. They're in the process of implementation and verification. With regard to longer term commitments around organizational realignment, ongoing monitoring, and safety related supporting procedures, those are progressing and again being monitored independently by TRA as well. RTM is also progressing an ongoing SMS resource assessment and continuous improvement and plan and procedure update processes. And again, these are independently monitored and verified by TRA. We could go to the next slide, please. With regard to upcoming TRA activities, We will continue to remain engaged with monitoring return to service commitments and long-term maintenance planning and contractor team resilience and viability. We'll continue to focus on key performance measures and key performance indicators where applicable and where those are helpful. As I mentioned earlier, we tried to look carefully at contractor resources and how they relate to industry best practices in key maintenance areas. We have been engaged and will continue to be engaged in monitoring the axle bearing failure root cause analysis and other smaller root cause analyses as those progress. And then finally, one of the items that we've looked closely at as part of the SMS commitments over the last several months since the beginning of our work in November is to encourage more comprehensive incident and accident investigations. And we're happy to say that as part of the SMS update process and the ongoing engagement between the city and RTM, that process has progressed well. And that's my last slide. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dan. So yeah, I'll provide an update on our key performance indicators, and if you can move to the next slide, that would be great. As Madame Elmcard mentioned, on the rail side of things, we have been seeing, 99% or more of our service has been delivered. Obviously we did have the major storm event which impacted service that day, but aside from the major weather event, very, very solid, reliable service on the rail side of things. With regards to the bus service delivery, as previously mentioned, we have seen a drop in our service performance on the bus side, but we do have short-term and long-term strategies that are in place, and our focus is on improving that as quickly as possible, and with a key focus to September service. And then again, as Madame Elmcard mentioned, ridership data for updated ridership data from the previous Transit Commission is not available yet. We're still doing those final calculations. It really is just a function of how TC fell fairly early in the month this month, because the month started, I believe, on a Wednesday. So our ridership calculations will require some additional information from our UPass institutions, and they require a bit more time. So those final calculations are being done on the ridership side of things. And as Madame Elmcard mentioned, we'll be providing that information later next week via memo. You go to the next slide, please. So, this graph you've seen many times before, but, we continue to see a real positive trend in terms of our service since March to present. You will note that the severe weather event, we did highlight there that we did activate R1 for that day, but we were able to return to service, partial service later in the evening, and then full service by the end of the day. So that was good news. And then as of June 8th, for the month of June, we were at basically 100% of the service was delivered. So real positive statistics. And I know I mentioned it previously, but it is worth noting that all those individual dots that you see, those are individual service days, and you're really seeing them congregate more and more up to that 99, 100%. That's exactly what we want to see. So good, stable performance that our customers are receiving, and we've been able to continue that for an extended period of time. Next slide, please. With regards to our Lrv availability, you've seen this before. We've been tracking the fleet on a daily basis. This is a snapshot that was pulled from Monday. Shows the status of our fleet and where they're at all times. So as of that Monday, we had 37 individual cars available for service, and 4 that were unavailable for service. Of the 4 that were unavailable for service, as reported the last Transit Commission, 2 of those are the long-term stop trains that are a result of derailments. One of the 4 is currently being worked on at an offsite location. The second is ready to be shipped, and we're just waiting for the final paperwork. I'm working with OPS to make sure we have, and the MTO to make sure we have the right permissions and support to get that taken off site so that it can be repaired. So that work is progressing. The other 2 vehicles that are not long-term stop, one of them is what we sort of would refer to as short-term stop, and it's undergoing its 7,500 kilometer inspection. And the other vehicle is what we term as a medium-term stop, and that is undergoing its 300,000 kilometer inspection, as well as getting some suspension work done on it at the same time. Go to next slide, please. Turning to the bus side of things, as we've discussed, we recovered from the weather event, the winter season, as well as the truck convoy. But with the April service change and the implementation of the 30-minute breaks, we have seen a drop in our performance. But as I said, we have those long-term and short-term mitigations that we're actively working on trying to expedite. Good news is that we do have a class. I believe it's 26 people that have graduated today, so they'll be put into, they're graduating today, and they'll be put into service immediately this afternoon. So that should provide some relief, and it's just one of the steps in the right direction to getting those numbers back up to where we expect and where our customers want to see them. At the last Transit Commission as well, there was a request to provide some additional information on what our service reliability or service delivery looks like in both the AM and PM peak periods. So the graph that you see just to the right there, the smaller is a zoomed in version of April and May service, and what you see there is that solid black line. It represents the service delivery for the morning peak period, and that dotted line you see there is the PM peak period. So the general trend that we see is that in the morning peak period, service delivery tends to be below the average for the day, and in the afternoon peak period, the service delivery tends to be either above or at the average for the day. So just providing a little bit more insight into where we're seeing those cancellations and those challenges. Moving to our next slide, please. Moving to our bus availability. Again, we see good solid reliability in terms of providing our fleet. There is one day there. You'll see that we were short by one vehicle for our morning peak period, but that was quickly rectified, and it's just attributed to mid-month. There's a lot of work with regards to the inspections and meeting our MTO requirements. So there was a miss of one vehicle that day, but recovered for the following day. And actually, if you go to the next slide, you'll see for the afternoon bus availability, we actually recovered for that afternoon peak period. So we're pleased with the performance on our maintenance team. They're doing a good job of maintaining our fleet to make sure that we have the right number of buses to provide the service. And I believe that's the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you everybody for being part of that presentation. Okay, so we'll try this again. Let's go to Laura Shantz, please, for the delegation.
Just a reminder that the speaker will need to accept the prompt to be promoted to panelist again. She's coming online now, Chair, or they are.
For your help.
Sorry about that. I'm connecting from my phone, so it was a little tricky to get the prompt working. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Laura.
Excellent. Thanks so much for hearing me today. I won't take a lot of your time. Just a few quick notes from Ottawa Transit riders. Listening to your presentation about the ongoing work by RTA, my question would be, relating to that, riders are still wanting to know what is the safety plan in terms of the LRT for riders who are disabled, who use mobility devices and need to be kept with those devices for getting them off the train. And I'm just kind of hoping one of these times when we hear that update that we're actually going to hear that safety plan is ready to be published and that it's going to be coming out for folks, because that would be a great way to get some more rider confidence, especially among those who do need assistive devices. The other comment is I recognize that this is the last meeting until September, which is, a couple months from now. And I guess, a lot of riders, one thing we're hearing is kind of wondering where things are at in terms of, what this next year is going to look like. And, folks are asking, what I'm hearing a lot of is, why are we not hearing about what's planned in terms of, I understand there's an update on the the long-term fare strategy, if that's going to be something that we're going to hear about now, or if that's going to wait for next council, and just having a little more clarity on those issues in terms of, how things are going to be funded. Will there be more funding for new parabuses? It's stuff that riders are asking, and we're just kind of hoping that we can hear some of those answers in the updates today. And I just wanted to bring those issues to your attention. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Is there any questions for the delegation? Okay, well, thank you for coming out today, Laura, and providing your information to us. Okay, we'll now go to questions to staff. Commissioner Wright Gilbert.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few questions about the presentation. You were talking about the bus operator recruitment campaign and that there's 26 operators graduating today and going on the road, which is good to see. But what are the projections for the next 3 months? How many operators are we looking at coming online or on the road in the next 3 months?
Merci, merci commissaire Chair. Je n'ai pas sous la main les attendez, je n'ai pas sous la main les informations.
I don't have the information at hand, but that's easy to get because that will be the summer service. So we need less operators, as you know, because there'll be some on holidays.
Okay. I guess it doesn't really answer my question. I understand you don't have the information available, but I don't really see a connection between summer service and less operators needed and the fact that we need a lot more operators in order to fulfill our fall service, which, sure, it's only midway through June now, but I understand training takes a while. So maybe I can put it to you this way. What is the target for new operators hired by the time fall service starts? Hired and on the road, I should say.
J'ai pas compris la question.
Oh, sorry.
Can you repeat, please?
Yeah. What is your target number of operators hired, trained, and on the road by the time fall service starts?
Comme je l'avais déjà mentionné à la dernière.
As I said at the last meeting, regarding the new act, the CSC, we need 80 operators. Meanwhile, there are operators who are retiring or are getting jobs elsewhere, so they need to be replaced here. That's why we have a plan. And in that plan, we make sure that we have the operators needed, and we're preparing to the line 2 for the Trillium line. So we're focusing now on the 80 operators we needed now for the CLC, and then we will focus on the replacement, the attrition, really, that people are leaving, and then we'll be continuing like this. So for September, we will have the required number of operators for our service.
So when you say for September, you'll have the required number, that means 80, the 80 you were looking for?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So the rail work that was delayed due to materials being delayed, what are the risks of this work being delayed?
Could you repeat your question, please?
Sure.
You want me to jump in? I can provide an answer to that.
I didn't hear the question because I was on the translation and the translation has not done.
Okay. The track work that's been delayed, we've done a risk assessment on it. We've involved TRA, and I'll welcome Dan if he wants to provide some comments on that. Really, what it comes down to at the end of the day is that the track does need replaced. It's not a safety issue. It's still well within all its standards and tolerances. But from now until the time in which it's replaced, there may be it's that noise and that vibration that customers experience. So That track replacement will greatly improve that for customers in those areas. It's on those curves on approach to Herdman. So when you're going in the westbound direction, it's on approach to Herdman Station. So really it's about customer comfort, noise and vibration. That track does need to be replaced. It will need to be replaced at some point, but at this point in time, there's no safety concerns with that. And there is going to be enhanced inspections and reviews by RTM and Alstom to ensure that it continues that way.
Okay, let's hope that RTM and Alstom does those inspections. Madam Amilcar, are you committed to sharing publicly the RTG report on the August derailment? And I thank you for that. I think that goes a long way to transparency. Will you commit to sharing a full unredacted version publicly?
Chair, on peut pas, pour
Monsieur
l'instant.
le Président, we can't do anything with the talks we're having with RTG. We did receive, indeed, a preliminary version, which is RTG and Alstrom's property. But as I said, as soon as we get the final report, we will share it with you.
So you aren't able to commit to sharing a full unredacted report because, of course, the report is the property of RTM RTG, which is a function of the P3, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
So not so much transparency then. All right. The all-day family pass, glad to see that. Is there a cap on the number of family members that can use this pass?
Is someone on my team can answer that? I don't know. Pat?
Yes, there is. It's up to 2 people who would pay an adult fare, and I'm going to check right now whether it's 3 or 4 people who would normally pay a child's fare.
It's 4. I just looked on the website.
All right, thank you.
So no problem. So it's 4 children under the age of 13 and a maximum of 2 people over the age of 13, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I assume there are families out there that have more than 4 kids. That's my own personal hell, but I understand some people like a lot of kids. So in that case, they would have to pay an additional fare, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And my last question was about LRT service reliability. Glad to see that it's improved. I think the only way we're going to, or one of the ways we're going to get our customers back is having reliable service on top of transparency and communication, but we'll work on those. We are, however, seeing incidents of stopped trains every single week. There isn't a week that goes by that there isn't a stopped train. So my question is there a consistent reason for these stopped trains? Are they having distinct different issues? What's going on with the trains and their issues with stopping?
Chair, de façon générale, puis Troy.
Well, generally, Troy can complete. It's very normal that there are issues with a train. Our priority, of course, is to ensure that the service resumes as fast as possible, which we've been doing for several months now very well. And if the operator hears a noise, he has to stop. If somebody is not feeling good in the train, he might have to stop. And if the operator sees there's an issue, he can, he has to stop the train. So the reliability as such is very good, like Troy told you. And the small, short stops that we see, those are the normal operations, really. Troy, I don't know if you want to add something. Yes.
Provide a little bit more information on that. With respect to the number one cause of stop trains that we're seeing, like there's not one specific thing. I mean, these trains are designed to fail safe in that if there's a communication, something is not right in the communications or with the CBTC system, the train will stop and will come to that stop. So You know, some of the common things, I wouldn't say it's a trend, but, you know, braking systems, propulsion systems, and then I think in the past we've talked about, you know, obstructed motion. Those tend to be the common occurrences, but, you know, we've had, you know, we've had some mechanical issues from time to time with regards to the pantograph. I believe we previously talked about that, but there's no one specific thing. You know, and a number of our stop trains that we've received recently as well are a result of, you know, things like, you know, trespassers on the track, or you know, customer requiring to pull the emergency notification to our operator because they're experiencing something on the train. So there's a number of factors, but there's no, I wouldn't say there's no one specific trend, but you know, they are related to the vehicle and how it communicates. But the important piece is that the trains do fail safe, and they will stop if anything is not functioning as it's intended.
Thank you for that. I'm going to just make I have one final point and then a final question. I understand that trains are going to stop from time to time, and that's normal service. That's a normal thing that happens with trains. But I think that we need to be very careful about how we talk about this. We have customers who have lived through not so great service for 2 years since this launched, and it might be over 2 years now, and 2 derailments. So talking about trains stopping, it's a normal issue. Sure, that may work in other municipalities, but in Ottawa, where people are already a bit, I'll say traumatized, but it's a bit overstating it. I think we need to be very, very careful about the language we use when talking about stopped trains, because people are nervous. My final question is, when you're talking about various reasons and you're not seeing any trends for the train stopping, Mr. Charter, is anybody either within OC Transpo or in RTM or our beloved TRA, is there anybody tracking the reasons for the stop trains, to look at trends, to look at the circumstances, the weather, how many people were aboard, anything? Is anybody tracking these so that if a trend does start to evolve, we can see it early and react to it?
Chair, la réponse courte, c'est oui.
The short answer is yes. We also have reviews that are done with the technical teams to make sure, just to see if there are trends regarding the reliability. And maybe Troy can complete on this. No matter what happens, everything is followed up in the system, so we can have a trackability, and so we can take measures if required.
If I could just add on to that, thank you, Madame Amilcar. You know, we have daily meetings with representatives from RTM and all.
Is that it, Commissioner?
Oh, I think Mr. Charter was giving some further information, Councillor Hubley, Chair Hubley, sorry.
Yeah, can everyone hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So no, we have a daily meeting every single day where we review the previous day's performance. We talk about if there's any disruptions, any issues with the vehicles, and then if anything needs to be further discussed or reviewed, then as Madame Amilcar mentioned, we refer that to the engineering teams. We're glad that we brought on Mr. Richard Holder as a director of engineering with us, so that'll further enhance our oversight over that. So we have daily meetings, and then we have specialized technical meetings that are regularly scheduled. So we're looking at all those variables, and I think I do want to give a bit of credit to RTM and Alstom in that part of the reasons why we are seeing such improved performance over the past couple months is they have been much more proactive in reviewing, investigating, and really getting into the details. So there's been a lot of effort to get to that 98-99%. But to answer, to long story short, Commissioner, yes, we follow up on all those things, and any sort of major incident as well, we do a detailed debrief, and we look at the response times, operator actions, everything. So we've got good cooperation from all parties on that, and TRA is involved in a lot of those meetings, definitely the daily meetings and those specialized engineering meetings as well.
40 seconds left.
Thank you, Mr. Charter. I think while some of the credit can certainly go to RTG, RTM, I think a a lot of the credit needs to go to the City of Ottawa and, of course, TRA for the oversight of RTM, essentially forcing them after 2 derailments to get their act together. So, you know, great on RTM for stepping up and doing their job, but I do give a lot of credit to TRA and to the new folks hired at the City of Ottawa. I think that's really important, but I'm not going to put RTM, RTG on a pedestal just yet. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor McKenney, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff, for the update. I was going to ask about the plans for July 1st as they relate to Canada Day and the Breton Flats, but I understand now that I am going to receive a briefing around Pimsey Station. So I will allow that to occur, and thank you for that. Just a couple of questions I have around the funding agreements for the zero emission buses. I noted that the Infrastructure Canada funding agreement, that we expected it to be in place in Q4 2022, and I just wonder what the implications are if, in fact, Council is in a lame duck period in Q4 2022. What happens to that agreement in that case?
Merci, conseiller, chair.
Thank you, Councillor and Chair. I'll answer. The last meetings we've had, well, the last one 2 days ago, we were told it would be in the fall. My colleagues said it would be probably beginning of 2023. What we'll be doing in the meantime, we will continue internally with our research work, and we'll make sure that we progress as much as possible. For instance, we prepared a call for tender for the purchasing of the buses. We have an agreement with the bank that my colleague presented you. We continue to work with Hydro. All this work has to be done too. Yet it's clear that if this grant is delayed furthermore, we'll be at risk in the delivery of the service, because the diesel buses must be replaced. Still, we're able with our teams regarding the availability of bus to continue to operate with the buses, but it won't be possible for a long time. But for a few more months, we should be able to provide the service.
Okay, appreciate that. So I guess we'll just have to consider that in September once we know where we're at in terms of our ability to approve funding. And just again on the funding, I noted that I think it was the Infrastructure Canada loan, or that it was the CIB, that the repayment, the source of repayment was that it was repayable only from the cost savings of the zero emission buses versus diesel. Is that the same source of repayment for both loans?
Dramo here from Deloitte. Maybe I can answer that question. Maybe I can clarify. I think I oversimplify things a little bit. So it's a program. You're going to be purchasing the buses. The CIB will, the size of the CIB loan and the funds from the CIB loan can only be applied to the purchase of the buses themselves. On the city side, the source of funds that you'll be using to repay all your costs will be the savings that you've achieved by the conversion, the INFC grant, that's not repayable, right?
Okay.
And with the I'll call it the quirk, or the key component of the CIB loan, is they will measure the projected costs at the time that this facility was in place, the baseline that was assumed for those costs of the buses versus what you paid. And if you've paid more than was assumed at the time of the baseline, you're not responsible for the incremental amount.
Okay. Okay,
So
that's
they're
fair.
kind of backstopping those incremental costs. That's why when we say, and that I should have been careful when I was presenting, it's a loan, it's not a source of funds. But because they're effectively backstopping the incremental costs for the purchase of those buses, they're protecting you from any upside because you're going to be buying the buses in the next 5 years. You've got to project what those costs will be. So they're protecting you from costs over and above what both of us, both the city and the CIB, have assumed those buses are going to cost. So they're basically taking the risk of what the electric bus cost. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't catch that from the.
No, I didn't explain it.
But that's
very well.
okay. No, that's okay. I just have to think about it now.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it before. Okay, that's and of course the infrastructure candidate is a grant, so that's
correct.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Just a last question, Chair, just quickly, just around bus service availability. I wonder if there is a method for choosing or how it's decided which bus would get pulled. I'm sure we all have accounts from residents who are telling us, I waited for this bus and it's often doesn't come, and that means, a 40-minute wait instead of, a 20-minute or, an hour wait instead of 30 minutes, which can really, it just makes all the difference for somebody, waiting to get home, pick up kids at daycare, wherever they're going and whatever they're doing. So, commuters versus, getting around your neighborhood, like, what is the method for choosing at that moment which route is going to be affected?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. And Chair, I will ask Troy to explain how TOCC works.
Sure thing. Just to start off, obviously there is some variability from day to day. The TOCC needs to react to where some of those the gaps are in terms of whether it be an operator or a bus or a detour or something like that. So there is some day-to-day variability in that. But the TOCC really our Transit Operations Control Center, the TOCC, they really focus on prioritizing certain trips, and so school trips, first and last trips of the day, trips that are infrequent service, and as well bus routes or trips that there's not other options available to customers. Those ones are the priority for the control center to try to fill, and keep those ones going as much as possible. Then on a weekly basis, they also look at where some of those cancellations have occurred, and they try to make sure as best they can that they're not canceling the same trips at the same times every single day, and try to move it around a little bit. But they really focus on prioritizing certain trips, and as I said, it's those first and last trips, school trips, and then the trips that have very, very infrequent service or there's not other options for customers.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that it's done, almost spontaneously. You don't know which, sometimes, not always, but I just want to take that opportunity to say, those first and last trips are so important. It gets people to, to that end destination, but also for people moving around their community to get to groceries or daycare, and usually those are riders who don't have other options to be able to get around. So I can appreciate that it's difficult. I hope that the new drivers that we're hiring on makes a significant difference, because I really do feel that that the cost of transit plus when we have buses that don't show up really detract from our ridership. I'm sure you know that as well. So thank you, Chair. Thank you to staff for the update.
Thank you, Councillor, very much. Next up is Commissioner Olson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madame Amilcar, merci de votre présentation.
Thank you, Madame Amilcar, for your presentation. I do have a question for Mr. Gucci. about the zero emission buses.
Mr. Boucher, you spoke about the savings from the electric buses being the source of funds for the repayment, if I could put it that way, or that's the amount. Is it operating savings or is it life cycle savings? That is acquisition and operations.
It's a bit of both. It's mostly the efficiency of less maintenance costs to maintain the vehicles, as well as the savings you have in terms of the consumption of electricity versus the consumption of diesel fuel.
Okay, and the 15-year repayment period, is that the expected lifespan of the buses? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Has it improved, the lifespan? Has it improved in the last few years, or?
You know, this is the difficulty in the sense that the electric buses that have now been piloted across Canada, and that's principally what the city's been relying upon because of climate condition, et cetera, they're relatively new. But when you look at the buses themselves, like the wheels, the brakes, the air conditioning system, the doors, the chassis, these aren't too much different between electric and the diesel bus. It's just the powered system, the motors. So I think the expectation is, well maintained, you should be able to get 15 years out of it, but you just don't have that track record yet because the electric vehicles haven't been in production for that long.
So if a bus lasts less than that time, is there any downside risk to the city, or is that being captured in the arrangement somehow?
Yeah, it's part of it. It'll be a programmatic risk that we factored in the sense the city will have to look at that just in terms of how it normally runs. That issue, frankly, would be no different than what you're currently with your current fleet, frankly.
Okay.
So we built that into the projections, and I think those details will come forward together with the INFC grant details and the Hydro Ottawa and Barrie details later. At that point in time, all the numbers be confirmed. I think we can give you better information at that point in time.
So you've made an assessment and put a number on the risk of buses not lasting their expected.
Yeah, and you can flex that upside and downside risk factors. Again, once the specific details have been confirmed, then we'll be able to present those scenarios.
Okay. Has there been any thought? I know we're just in the first phase of this, but obviously once we go down this track, we're kind of stuck on a track for a while. So that means, in a sense, purchasing a lot of new buses in another 10 to 15 years. It's a shorter lifespan than we're kind of used to having with the turnover of buses. Has that been sort of taken into account, or people giving thought to that as well?
I think the approach that the city's taken is a very prudent one. It's almost a maintenance depot by maintenance depot, in the sense that, so I think we spoke about this last spring, Saint Laurent facility, assume that that's being converted electric. You can imagine would be impractical to have electric and diesel be maintained in the same facility, recognizing you've got a transition there. And those transition costs are also part of the program. They're to go together with the bus acquisition cost, the transition cost, and the charging infrastructure. So if you look at it from a depot by depot perspective, that enables you to gradually phase in the conversion. I think that's the most practical way that anyone who has a large fleet, transit, we see that on Deloitte from our transportation clients. That's the way everyone's sort of looking at it. And as well, because of the electricity that you need to charge the vehicles is very local, because that's where the power comes from, then you really should look at it from a depot by depot. So that gives you some comfort to say it doesn't have to be the entire fleet all at once, but once you've made a decision to convert a depot, you're pretty much committed to that whole depot.
Okay. Final question. The storm in May, which knocked out power through much of the city for an extended period, has that actually come up, and are people taking things like that into account? I don't know if it's you or if it's Madame Amilcar who should be answering that or not.
Well, I'll just answer the one part, and if the city team wants to bring additional. So we talked about the charging infrastructure bringing the power, the service to the facility, so you can, from the grid, recharge the buses every day. and then the charging stations themselves. And the third component is on-site standby power, right? So if the grid goes down, there'll be generators on the facility that will be able to run those chargers in the case of a power outage. So the redundancy is being built in, and that'll be part of the maintenance program as well. That'll be developed as the program and advances.
Okay. That is great. Mr. Chair, I have no other questions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pucci.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up is Commissioner Brockington, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you and colleagues. First, I just want to thank Madame Amical, who came to River Ward last week for one of our big annual events that we were finally able to host again in person. And Madame Amical, I just want to share with you how pleased local residents were to see you in person. First of all, that you came and people were able to meet you. And they think it's great that in addition to members of council, that senior staff come to these events. So I wanted to thank you for coming out. Appreciate it. I only have two questions or two themes. One is the bus reliability that Mr. Charter touched upon, and I appreciate his acknowledgement that we've been having some challenges lately with bus reliability. And as a transit commissioner, I think sort of the macro level or high level data is important to see, but for me, I still can't wrap my head around some of the challenges. And I want to focus at rush hour. And maybe Mr. Scrimger can help me. Let's just use the morning rush hour strictly as an example. Rush hour, I assume, is about 7 a.m. to 9 o'clock. Is that a fair time period?
It's fair. We consider it starting a little earlier than that because part of the work is getting the buses in position out of the garage and to the beginning of the route. So we are usually talking about 6 or 6:30 until 9.
Okay. Can you estimate how many unique runs across the city occur during the morning rush hour period? Not the number of bus routes, but the number of runs that are scheduled in that 2.5 period. 700, 800, 1,000, how many runs?
Well, to be clear on terminology, we count the number of trips. So that would be a departure from the first point, arrival to the end.
Yes.
I don't know the number. I know that my team knows the number. And if I can get back to you in a minute, I think it'll probably pop up as a text message to me and I'll get back to you then.
Right. Just for the sake of this discussion, let's just say it's
so we run about 8,000 trips a day,
right.
And I would say about half of those occur during rush hours and about half of those occur during each of the morning and afternoon. So in the neighborhood of 2,000 trips in the morning rush hour.
Okay, so I'm just trying to give everyone sort of my thinking here. So let's just say 2,000 trips occur during the morning rush hour. And I pick rush hour because that's when a bulk of people travel. I acknowledge people travel all throughout the day, but if we're going to focus our efforts, just for example, I'm picking rush hour. Mr. Scrimger, can you tell us during that morning rush hour where there are approximately 2,000 trips, how many of those trips ran early? How many of those trips ran on time? And how many of those trips ran late?
Yes, we have all of those data. Those were, I believe, primarily reported at the last meeting in the twice annual performance report. I can look those numbers up if we need to talk about them in detail.
So you report them at the aggregate level. You can boil that down to specific time periods. And I assume you have exactly the same data per bus, correct?
So every trip, we have all the details of every trip and at every stop, exactly when it got there.
So where am I going with this question? I, like other members of the commission, have bus routes that serve either in my ward or part of my ward that are chronically having reliability issues. And it would take a lot of time, and I'm not sure if it's even appropriate for the commission as a whole to deal with one bus route at a time. But as I've said for many meetings now, there's got to be a way to pinpoint these bus routes that chronically have reliability issues, understand what those issues are, and work with OC Transpo on a plan to address these issues. The route example I gave last meeting was the Route 85. The Route 85 struggles to be consistently reliable. And I'm just using that as example. How can I work with OC Transpo when I know there are routes that historically struggle to be reliable, to understand what the issues are that impact its reliability and fixing it, making sure that we can improve going forward.
So, I mean, generally speaking, we'll be happy to work with any councillor on any route they're interested in. We continuously, the work that Troy's been speaking of, that the control center does every day, the work that Mr. Greer's team does, that my team does on similar works. We're all just working at sort of different time scales, but we are reviewing continuously which routes are having the most trouble, let's say, and what are the solutions to them. That's work that we don't stop doing. I wouldn't presume to say we're going to reach out to councillors and say we need your help on any of these things, because so much of that is within city staff control. We do come to councillors when we've got recommendations for you for more substantial changes that would improve reliability, such as moving where bus stops are, changing how traffic regulations are on that street. However, any councillor who would like to do a deeper dive into any route or any couple of routes that serve their wards, we're very happy to have that discussion anytime.
And I appreciate that offer, Pat. You've been very good in the past to have those discussions. My challenge as a commissioner is when I see the macro data, it doesn't tell me those challenges because we don't get into the minor stuff or the micro level stuff. And I have no idea what the case is like in other wards because I hear about what's happening in my ward in particular. And so that's my thinking behind that. But I certainly will reach out to you about local issues. My last question is just about the free transit service on Canada Day. Has OC Transpo partnered with any partner, not corporation, but any local group or national group to offset the lost revenues by offering free transit? I support free transit on Canada Day, but we also have to be cognizant of the revenues we're giving up. Have we partnered with anyone to sponsor transit this day like we've done in the past on New Year's Eve with, I think it was MAD or other groups?
On Canada Day in the last few years, we have not. In fact, Canada Day, we have not. Early on in the years in which we've offered Canada Day service for free, we did reach out to see if there were any organizations who were interested in getting some profile because they would contribute to it. There were none found. So at this point, and for the last quite a number of years, it's just been built into the city budget each year that no fare revenue is expected on that day. On New Year's Eve, it's been a little different, but many of the times the the New Year's Eve free service has really been sponsored from another city account, from safe driving promotion, that people shouldn't drink and drive. So that's just really been an allocation from one council budget to another. My memory is that it's been really quite a few years since there was probably anywhere in the country private companies who were sponsoring New Year's Eve service. It used to be very common for it to be the distillers or brewers, but not so much recently. And and there hasn't ever been an external sponsor for Canada Day.
That's time.
Thanks very much, Chair. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up is Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the OC Transpo team for the presentation information. Merci beaucoup. I just want to give you one thing that my son was visiting from Montreal and was coming to meet me, and he could just tap his card and get on the train and ride a little closer so I could meet with him. So he was impressed with that. Is great for people coming from out of town who don't carry a card or a pass. So I think that's a really positive innovation for people visiting. So I just wanted to pass that on. And he's from Montreal, so, and he loves the Montreal system. Thank you. It's already been raised about the choices of cancellation, and we're all in our little bubbles here of as councillors of what we see, because what we get is from our residents that are affected by these cancellations. And there seems to be a pattern in terms of what we see, because it's over and over again the same routes that we hear about very prominently. So, and I've raised them before, but I'll raise it again. The 51 in Britannia Village, sometimes that's it seems that the bus does not go through the village and skips it, perhaps to save time if they're behind. But it is a key point, and of course, the focus on morning. That's when people are particularly in a hurry and particularly concerned, and that's when we hear about these cancellations. So I'm hearing about the 51 where it's either canceled or some stops are missed because it's a loop that isn't taken. The other one is to Stittsville, and I've talked to my colleague about this before, Councillor Gower, because there seems to be a bus service to Stittsville that is delayed a lot or canceled, and that's the 61 and 62. So those ones I wanted to bring to your attention. You know, I'm listening to my colleagues, and it sounds like there's some similar patterns, and of course the morning seems to be the crunch time. There's no doubt about it. From you're talking about 2,000 trips in the morning, but those are the ongoing concerns. Is there a possibility to look into these a little more deeply? Maybe visit with councillors to go through their top concerns.
Will do.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Merci beaucoup. I have a question in terms of the new buses coming on, the electric buses. I'm curious, what happens to the old buses, and how are they environmentally, sustainably disposed of? Do we just kind of send them away? I mean, I'm curious about what happens to them, because they don't disappear, and we're taking on something new technology, but are they given to other? Are they sold off to other cities or towns? Or I'm just curious of what happens to them in terms of recycling, etc.
Chair, je réponds en partie, puis peut-être Pat ou Jim.
I will answer partially, and then I will pass the floor to my colleague. Normally, after 15 years, we replace these buses. We do have a process in place. We either send them to a scrap yard or send to another dealer. But I will let my colleague to complete my answer. But we're respecting environmental standard for off-service buses. So I will give the floor to Jim.
Merci, Madam Chair. Yes, we do do a very strict environmental process through city procurement when we're decommissioning buses. There isn't much of a market for these buses. They're getting close to a million kilometers on them. So they're 15 years. Some of them are in the 19-year range. So what we do is we'll go out to a tendering process. We'll find basically recyclers that are interested in purchasing the vehicles. There has not been traditionally much of a value on the older buses. On an average, we'd be lucky to get in the $600 range to $1,000 range on an actual bus. So it is. And what we'll do is we'll recycle any of the tires. If it had recently new tires, if it had any recent new parts, we will recycle those back and repurpose them where we can. And then we will we'll dispose of them through the city processes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we're consistent when because they don't go poof. And I just want to make sure that we're thinking about that as well.
It is definitely a large process when you're retiring 50, 60, 70 buses at a time. It's definitely a large process that we watch very closely.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up is Councillor Gower. And if you don't mind, could Vice Chair Cloutier take over and inform me for a couple of minutes, please?
Noted, Chair. Thank you. Councillor Gower.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. Good morning. Bonjour. Two quick questions. One is about the annual bus stop improvement program, both for 2021 projects and 2022 projects. Can staff let us know, is that proceeding on schedule? Are there any delays due to construction or materials? How are we doing with bus stop improvement?
Mr. Chair, I can say that it's going. It'll be going and continuing until, as long as construction can continue. Yes, there are some challenges in supply of some parts, and that's worldwide supply chain challenges. We'll do our best to achieve everything, and we'll certainly let you know if there's anything that was on our plans that we're having difficulty, any specific location where there's something on our plans that it turns out we're not able to deliver by the end of the construction season.
Okay, thank you. And the other question is, I have been receiving more inquiries from residents about peak hour service for the 200 series buses. So from, in my case, Stittsville to downtown. Will some of the services that have been reduced during the pandemic be restored in the fall? And what would trigger that? Is it ridership levels? Is it drivers? I guess, so I'm looking for a bit of an outlook as to what to expect with the fall service changes.
So generally speaking, Mr. Vice Chair, the service levels that we're running in this, generally speaking, the service levels that we're running in the winter and spring are the same levels that are budgeted to continue in the fall. If there are, and that includes a continuation of the temporary suspensions that came into place in mid-2021. So the budget for all of 2022 is based on that reduced level. So two things we will be doing is watching all of those routes to see whether there's a need to increase capacity on any of the routes, or to, and there's different ways of doing that. It might be to add a trip, it might be to add a part of a trip, it might be to assign a larger bus to that, to the busy trip. The second thing that we will also be doing is watching very carefully what ridership is right up until the date that we have to lock down a budget to recommend to council for the year 2023. And if so we'll be watching to see whether we need to recommend increases in funding for 2023, or and if so, what evidence that should be based on. However, I will say generally, if any councillor is hearing consistent reports of overcrowding that perhaps aren't getting to us, or any reports of customers being left behind because of a trip that's regularly overloaded, we would love the opportunity to look into it to see if that's a result of any faults in our service delivery, or whether it's related to more ridership coming back as more people return to on-site learning and on-site work.
Okay, thanks very much.
Those are all your questions, Councillor Gower. Yeah. Councillor Meehan, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, I'm here, even though my camera's not on. Interesting discussion this morning. Thank you, everyone, for the information. I'd just like to talk about the budget just for a second. I know when we set this year's budget, gas was at a certain level, and now we're looking at probably double the amount that we're paying for a liter. And I'm just wondering if we're keeping track, calculating how much damage this is doing to the budget at the, currently. Not sure who's going to answer.
Vice Chair, I can take that, and I can ask my colleague Isabel to provide more detail if you wish. We have a hedging policy here at the City of Ottawa where we lock in the price of gas and diesel, which really protects us from those price fluctuations throughout the year. So what we're seeing is we should be on budget with respect to it. So although you're seeing significant increases when you pull up to the station to fill up your car with gas, we're not seeing that because we've locked those prices in. And we do that to make sure that we stay on budget as much as possible and that it's very predictable for us. And I see Isabel's brought her camera on, so see what she wants to add to this. Thank you, Isabel.
No, I was just going to mention that we could provide an update on where we're tracking against budget if required, but we don't have that data available unless transit knows those details.
So because we buy in such bulk then that we're able to get a reduced rate that we lock in on, is that it?
It's a policy that we've adopted here, Councillor, to maintain and have predictability in our purchasing power for fuel.
And it's not a bulk purchase, it's a financing tool. We hedge with hedgers the fuel price for the future.
And can you tell us what that is right now? What that price would be?
I don't have it readily available, but we could let you know. It's what we based our budget on.
So, but would gasoline prices be a factor in, you know, the number of the size of the buses on routes that maybe are underutilized? I guess this would go to OC Transport and Mr. Scrimger or Ms. Amilcar. I'm just asking because I have residents who are asking me because they're saying, look, we're paying over $2 a liter in gasoline, and we're seeing still some very large buses rolling around the ward that are empty, and they think that this is very wasteful. So I'm just wondering if that is a factor at all in maybe putting a smaller bus on a route, or.
I can comment on that generally. We always will run on each work block the smallest bus that can carry the customers on the busiest point on the busiest trip on that work block. But to draw a picture, let's say a bus goes out at 6 in the morning, comes back in at 2 in the afternoon. Maybe it's done 20 trips during that time. The trip that might be the busiest would be, say, the one at 7:15 going towards the center of the city, and that would be the one that fills that bus the most. That bus might also go and will cover many other trips during its work day. And some of those trips will have lower ridership. And certainly when you see any trip towards the beginning of the trip, if it's heading towards the center of the city or at its last couple of stops as it's leaving from the center of the city, moving away from an O train station or from downtown, that's when you'd see fewer people on the bus. But I can say that we're always managing that to make sure that for in every instance, we are using the bus that will cost the city the least to cover every trip.
Okay. I guess I'm just going back to the contract that we had that we lock in a price. When does that contract actually end?
So we have a rolling contract that we negotiate for a period of many months. I believe one is 8 months, and then it rolls into the next 6 months. So it's an ongoing thing. We apply any changes to that in each budget cycle. So you'll see those changes come through in 2023 in terms of the hedging that we're able to achieve for that budget through the policy.
So if gas prices continue to stay at the levels they are, or God forbid, some speculate that they could actually go higher, we can certainly expect to be paying more for gasoline. I mean, we can't negotiate a price that's, you know, a lot lower than what we would pay, I guess. I mean, I guess I'm just saying, going forward, we're going to have to see more money in the budget for gasoline if in fact they stay high, the prices stay high.
We will see some pressures if the prices are maintained at that high level. And I wonder if I could just go back to one of your comments from earlier. You talked about residents seeing the price at the gas tank. And again, just a reminder, that's not what the city is paying. Our prices are substantially lower than that with respect to the hedging policy that we have in place. So just be assured that what we're paying is not what you're seeing reflective at the gas station today in those prices.
Love to see us all get that deal. Talking about, just going back to buses right now, I understand that we're going to have generators on some of the grids. Like if in fact we do see the power knocked out in the future, like we did at the end of May, and our fleet is largely going to be electrified. Is there a way that we can see the plan to mitigate potential problems going forward? Are we going to keep, you know, I know that it's going to take several years to replace all the diesel buses with electric buses, so we're not going to lose those electric buses immediately, but will we always have a contingency plan of some diesel buses that can step in when required? And I just cite the fact that, like, when we went to computers in the newsroom I worked with, we had a closet full of the old typewriters, because we knew things were going to, you know, go offline. And so we had a contingency plan. Is there somewhere where we can take a look at the contingency plan to find out, you know, we have diesel fuel available, we do have buses available if, God forbid, something unforeseeable really happens?
Vice Chair, je vais peut-être
I might answer this. The way we function is we have buses that are due at various time. And that's why we have 4 electric buses now. It's to do a project pilot to make sure that these buses will meet our needs, and so that we can have a good transition towards the 100% electric. I think we had planned until 2036, we wouldn't have any more diesel then. Actually, I think the decision was made here to ban the purchasing of diesel buses. So we'll have a transition period, and we'll learn to live with the electric buses as we get them. And that will be part of our daily life now, just like when the computers replaced the typewriters.
Okay, I love that. But at the same time, during that pilot project, we are going to see how efficiently an electric bus can handle an Ottawa winter, can handle some of the, you know, hills, snow, et cetera, et cetera. So will that plan, could that plan change given the performance of the electric buses in an Ottawa winter? You know, where the charging stations are, that sort of thing, so that we can rely on the electric buses all the time. And if something happens, we do have a backup plan. I think it's important to really have a backup plan when we're moving to new technology.
Chair, tout est dans la stratégie. C'est pour ça d'ailleurs que.
Well, everything is in the strategy. That's why OC Transpo transition plan from diesel to electric, my colleague Raymond said it, and me too. We're waiting for Infrastructure Canada to provide us the funds precisely so we can have a very smooth transition. So if we can buy small lots of buses at a time, we will be able to go through a smooth transition. I can reassure you, at the beginning, we'll have many diesel buses on the roads while we're going through the transition. and then the technology is progressing, evolving too. Like compared to 4 years ago, I've seen very big changes on electrical buses. So there's great progress. So the idea is to see what's going on the market. We're continuing to test. There's two or three meetings ago, we gave you information on electric buses data. We will continue with our research. We will continue to get these data, to collect these data, to share them with you. And if the buses are not reliable, we won't purchase them. We'll come back here to make the proper decision. But everybody is going through that change. So there's a positive pressure on the sellers so that they provide us with a good product.
Okay, I like to hear that. That is the whole idea behind the pilot project. We just don't want to jump in with both feet. I know it's exciting, to get the diesels off, but they might serve a purpose. And I like being prepared. That's all. I will thank you for that. I'm just wondering, maybe I can just go back to Ms. Stevenson just briefly. Did we find out how much we're paying for a liter of diesel fuel right now?
Thanks very much. $1.08.
Whoa. Okay. And you said we do a rolling negotiation, so this contract doesn't end and then we renegotiate.
Yeah, we have a rolling contract for 8 months, and then it rolls again for 8 months, and we continue to do that so we can lock in that price to give us that stability.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you to everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So that concludes the update on the Confederation line of bus service. Next item is the Paratranspose service verbal update. There's a staff presentation. There's no delegations. And so whenever you're ready, sorry, Renee, you could start your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Pat will present DOC Transpose.
Merci, Renee, and thank you, Chair. We'll go to the next 2 slides later, please. The next one after that. Thanks. And here's a general overview of some of the key performance indicators for Paratranspose service, which I'll go into more detail over the next few slides. Next slide, please. So on-time performance has been very, very good this year at averaging 97% for the year to date. We did see that on-time performance for Paratranspose service was lower during the month of May, largely due to the impacts of the storm, with many of the streets blocked for several days. And that just made it a little harder for buses to get to customers. The next slide, please. Also, telephone booking response times are still quite good, but we did see a longer wait in May than in April. We suspect that that's related to several impacts related to the storm. So we'll watch that more closely as we get our June figures in to see if we're back down to the range that we saw from February to April, or whether there's any other trends that we need to address in our planning. Next slide, please. As you can see, the number of bookings continues to increase as more people are returning to travel in the city, both online and by phone. But online booking is at this point only about 3% of the total bookings that are made. That's the orange, the small orange bar at the top. Most bookings are still being made by telephone. We are continuing to promote the new My Paratranspose online services through all of our communication channels, including octranspo.com, social media, and we're now playing messages on the phone line. So when someone gets into the phone queue to wait for their to speak to an agent, we do give them pre-recorded messages asking them if they'd like to learn more about trying My Paratranspose online services. The next slide, please. You can also see that customer feedback is remaining quite constant. This shows the number of complaints per 1,000 trips. We've been in that sort of 3.5 range, 3.5 per 1,000 over the last 4 months. Very consistent in May from previously. And on the next slide, you can also see that the topics of concern have been really consistent, with the largest fraction since January being that orange part of the bar that people are calling to speak with us about booking and about information. And many of those comments are related to people learning how to use and asking about how they can use and what future features are coming in the My Paratranspose online services. The next slide, please, shows that Paratranspose ridership was fractionally higher in May than it was in April. March, as you'll remember, was atypically higher, largely because of the free fares that were available for travel to and from downtown locations. And on the next, and I'll just interject there before we leave that we're now on Paratranspose at 59% of pre-pandemic levels. That's a higher rate of recovery than we had seen in April on the conventional side. And of course, as Troy mentioned earlier, we're soon hoping to see where we were in May on the conventional side. And on the next slide, we'll also just show there that fare revenue is tracking following the trends of ridership levels, of course. So that's the end of the presentation, and we'll be happy to take any questions that there are. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, first up is Commissioner Wright. Gilbert, please.
Thank you, and thank you for that update, Mr. Scrimgeour and Amilcar. I think it's really important, and I'm really glad that we passed the motion to have a separate update for Para, just to have a space so we can ask these questions. So it wasn't during this presentation, but I'm pretty sure I heard it in the line one presentation, a mention that we're with Paratranspose trips, we are now going to be going to increase shared trips. Did I hear that right, or am I just dreaming? I'm not sure.
So I'll say a little more. What Ms. Amilcar mentioned was that with ridership levels reaching as high as they have now, it's no longer possible to always put everyone in an individual minibus or an individual taxi, as it was when ridership was lower. So we will be telling customers that if they're traveling at busy times, there is a possibility that they may be sharing that vehicle with another customer as they would have normally before the pandemic and before ridership fell to the low levels it's been at for the last 2 and a bit years.
So I understand the need, right? I understand the need to sort of double up or triple up on passengers because of increased demand. My concern is that a lot of our Paratranspose passengers, some of them are immunocompromised, they're not well, they have medical conditions. We've just lifted the mask mandate on OC Transpo. So no one's required to wear a mask on Paratranspose buses. What are we doing to protect our customers who are more vulnerable? I mean, look, COVID's not over. We all know that. So what are we doing to protect our more vulnerable customers when they have to share a minibus with other clients?
Well, there's the first major thing, of course, is that we're continuing to remind all customers across all parts of the system that the advice from Ottawa Public Health continues to be that they strongly recommend that everyone continue to wear a mask. So that we're broadcasting that message, we're pushing that message out through many, many channels all the time. The second, for specific customers who have specific needs, as always, we ask them to get in touch with us, tell them what their particular travel needs are, if we need to adapt our service in any way so that they can travel in a healthy, safe way. Just get in touch with our customer service representatives, who many of them are already familiar with, and we'll work out the best plan for each individual that we can.
So this is more of a general question, but it also applies to Paratranspose. So I'm gonna ask it in this forum. If Ottawa Public Health, and I believe also the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada, which is Dr. Theresa Tam, strongly recommend that we continue to wear masks, why did we lift our mandatory mask policy on OC Transpo then?
Mr. Chair, as you may recall, the motion that was passed by the Transit Commission in 2020 was to make masks mandatory until, in the opinion of the Medical Officer of Health, it was no longer necessary. The Medical Officer of Health has given that opinion, and we follow her advice.
So it's no longer necessary, but strongly recommended. You see that there's a little bit of a crossing over there. You see that there's a bit of a problem with that statement, correct?
This is the advice we have and the advice we pass on to our customers.
Okay, well, we'll see where that gets us. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up is Commissioner Caricato, please.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, everyone. I'm wondering about the online booking and why we think it's only 3%. I mean, there was great fanfare when we announced this, and worked really hard with the group that we were consulting to make sure we got it right. And I'm just very surprised to see that there's only a 3% uptake. Do you have any guesses, Pat?
Mr. Chair, I have many, because we talked about this a lot. The first is, it's still quite new as an actual thing that people can use. We're into the second month now. So yes, those of us who've been working on it have been working on it for years. Those of us who've been in those of our customers who've been helping us with the development have been in it many years. But for many of our customers, it's a new thing. And the numbers we're reporting to you are for the month of May, which began just a couple of weeks after the service was announced. We'll be watching the numbers every month. We hope it'll continue to grow. We want it to continue to grow. We'll be encouraging customers to choose the thing that works best for them. And the more customers that choose online booking, the more pressure it will take off the phone queues. So it'll benefit both those customers who can, and because of the nature of their personal situation, choose to not or cannot use the online service. In addition, of course, we'll be rolling out more features as we get them, working sufficiently well, rolling out more features to just give more people a reason to move to online booking. If it ever gets to the point where it stabilizes at a certain level, then we might we'll see what lessons there are for us. But I think for our customers, this is still early on, and my understanding of just sort of anecdotal is that those customers who were the most keen, the most interested in using it, they've been using it for months. They were using it during the testing period. They were our helpers during that time, and they're continuing to use it. And so now we're just continue to get the word out, continue to help people. But in the end, it will be each individual's choice of how they want to arrange their trips.
And when you call the number and you're on hold, does it say you can also book this online?
Yes. So we do that not right away. We do that. I mean, if we can take the call right away, we take the call right away. If the agents are all busy at that moment, and people get put in the queue to wait for a few minutes until there's an agent ready to take their call, when they're in that queue, they will hear the message that says, why don't you think about trying out my Paratranspose online services? We're not aggressive about those yet, but those, you can think of those billboards you sometimes see. If you were on the train, you'd already be home by now, or if you lived here, you'd already, we can try stuff like that later, but it's still early yet for many people.
Yeah, I think some advertising, would be a good idea. Eventually, as you said, but I guess it's probably also too, like when I first joined the commission, it was like a significantly longer wait time that people had to wait. And then you guys did a great job hiring a bunch of new call attendants, and the wait times went down dramatically. And so the need for online all of a sudden, was no longer as pressing. So congratulations on that. And I do hope, though, we still see more overall uptake of the My Para online. I think it's a great platform. And as you said, we worked hard to roll it out, but it's still new. But I'll continue to push it out in my circles, and hopefully other councillors will too. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner, for your question. Okay, so that concludes the update on Paratranspose service. The next item we have is delegation of authority, contracts awarded for the period January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021 for the Transit Commission. I believe it was Commissioner Wright Gilbert that held that.
Yes, it was. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of questions. So when I was reviewing the documents associated, the long list of delegation of authority documents, at line 82, it's talking about the amount that we have paid thus far to STV, which is actually just over $900,000. It's noted as an extension and amendment of the contract. STV rang in my head a little bit, and now remember that that's the consulting company who was initially hired to review RTM's safe return to service plan, but was then dismissed because of perceived bias due to its work on line 1 prior to launch. Can you tell me any more information about this over $900,000 contract with STV?
Sorry, go ahead, please.
Yep. Yes, Mr. Chair. STV is, you know, as you're aware, they're a company that we've been working with for many years now, and they continue to assist us in our oversight over our internal performance. They assist us in conducting audits over various things. We look at things like, you know, our operational procedures out of the control center, emergency preparedness, how we respond to incidents, you know, our drills and exercises and our debriefs, you know, are they properly documented? So we continue to utilize STV to help provide us some of that industry best practice guidance on some of our internal practices and processes.
So essentially, if I'm understanding you correctly, the services that STV is providing the City of Ottawa are very similar to the services that TRA is providing the City of Ottawa with respect to RTM. Would that be a fair assessment?
Slightly. I mean, the TRA is focused on all RTM, RTG's actions and the actions they're taking to rectify you know, the issues that cause the derailment, as well as their safety improvements in terms of their safety management system. STB is more internally focused, looking at OC transpose actions. You know, I provided a few examples that, you know, that they recently completed a review of our training programs and our documentation and those types of things. So STB is more internally focused, whereas TRA is more focused on the actions of RTG and RTM.
Okay, but that's really the only difference, is that TRA is looking at RTG, RTM, and STV is looking at OC Transpo in the city. Was this contract with STV in place prior to the city, in the first place, hiring them on to do the job that TRA is now doing?
Yes.
So it would have been an additional contract to STV, additional separate contract to STV for the services that are essentially the same thing they're doing for the city, they would do for RTM, RTG.
It would have been a separate scope of work, but same company.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, and my last question, line 107. A contract was awarded to Maglin Site Furniture, which is, for everyone's interest, located in Woodstock, Ontario, for over $56,000 for 40 benches. There was no competition for this contract due to section 22.1, I think. I haven't been able to look it up, but it's quoted as technical or other reasons. Couple questions about this line item. Why do 40 outdoor benches cost the taxpayers over $56,000?
I can give a couple of answers, and we can certainly assist the commissioner if they're interested in looking into this further. The short answer will be that's the market price for the specifications that the council has approved.
So I looked at the benches. I went on to Maglin Site Furniture's website this morning. Great website. I looked at the benches. These are metal benches with rounded edges, correct, that have no back to them, right? They're attractive, I'll give you that. I don't understand how 40 benches cost $56,000 of the taxpayers' money. Also, why was there no competition for this contract? I can't imagine that there is any reason why Maglan Site Furniture is the only company that could possibly provide good-looking metal benches. What was the reason why there was no competition?
I'm just going to ask if Ms. Graham, Joanne, are you on the meeting to answer questions related to this? There you are. I think between the two of us, we should probably, Joanne Graham and I, both look into which bench exactly it was supplied under that contract, and perhaps have a later conversation with Commissioner Wright Gilbert with the details.
Okay, you do agree with me though that $56,000, I'm literally just doing the math on my phone right now, divided by 40 is we are paying $1,400 per bench.
I could do the math too. I'm sure you've done it.
I've literally just done it.
Only $1,400 per bench?
Well, I may have keyed it in wrong because I was talking at the same time. So give me a second. Yep, $1,400 per bench.
Maybe while you're checking, Commissioner Wright Gilbert, I just
40.
check and see if this includes installation, because usually when we're buying, as counselors, when we're buying benches, they include the installation, which is a concrete pad, and there's other, as Pat mentioned, there's requirements, for example, to be fireproof.
Sure. I totally get that. I totally get that, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that. As someone who is in the midst of massive renovations at my property, I understand, and the costs of doing business are higher. I think my main concern is not necessarily with the $56,000, which is still a lot of money, but there's no competition for this contract. Why did we not try to find, the best value for our money? I can't imagine that benches are so specialized that we need to go to one specific supplier. So I would like to know, and if you could perhaps put the explanation in an email to all of Commission so we can all get the same answer at the same time, why there was no competition for this contract.
We will answer both of those questions. We'll find out, and we will reply with the reason, whether this was the only company that could supply one that met the provincial standards, and we will find out what the scope included, delivery and any installation costs, and given an impression of how we were convinced, as we always are, that any contract award is in the best interest of the city.
Yes, and if you could also outline the steps you took to come to, if it is as a result, this exception to the contract rule was as a result of, this is the only company that could provide us with benches that meet the provincial requirements. If you could provide us an overview of how you came to that conclusion, what other companies were looked at, and why they were excluded from the contracting process, I think that would be very helpful.
Joanne, okay, we'll just agree to do exactly that?
That sounds good.
Thank you, we will.
Thank you, Mr. Scrimgeour and Ms. Graham. That's my questions, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Okay, so is this report received?
Received.
Thank you. Okay, next up, there is no in-camera items. Are there any notices of motion? None. Inquiries, I believe, Councillor Brockington, you have an inquiry for today?
Thanks, Chair, yes. Two main cohorts of OC Transpo passengers have historically been federal public servants and post-secondary students. With the advent of COVID resulting in the work and study from home model, transit ridership and fare revenues have plummeted and struggle to regain losses. My questions to staff, how many post-secondary students subscribed to the UPass program in January 2020, before COVID, and in January 2022, 2 years later? Based on discussions with post-secondary institutions, what are the estimates for UPass subscriptions in September of 2022? And then on the federal public servant side, prior to COVID, they accounted for approximately 20% of all transit ridership in Ottawa. What does this percentage equate to in numbers? That is the estimated number of federal public servant passengers as a proportion of total ridership. And based on discussions with the Public Service Commission and or other federal entities, what is the estimated number of federal public servant ridership as of September 2022? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have any other business? No? Okay. And Vice Chair, do you have a motion for adjournment?
Thank you, Chair, that the meeting of the Transit Commission for Wednesday, June 15th be adjourned.
Thank you. The next, sorry, the next meeting will be on Wednesday, September 14th, 2022. And the media availability will start at 11:50 today. Thank you all. Have a great summer.